All right, my 2 cent segment of the week to kick off the show, where I give my sports takes on things I've seen over the past few days to a week. And I'll get right into it. I went to the Chargers and Browns game at SoFi this past weekend. I will talk about that. I'm going to mention Kansas City a little bit here. We'll talk about the Chiefs. We will talk about Odell Beckham Jr., who seems to have lost himself in this offense with the Browns. If I have time, I'll mention the Tyson Fury fight. And also some college football stuff. Finally, Nick Saban in Alabama loses. Can't believe that. And my biggest surprise of the last couple of days has to be the Boston Red Sox. The fact that I thought they were going to get swept, and they beat the Rays, who I thought was going to go to the World Series. Shows you how much everybody knows, including me. But anyway, let me start with some football stuff. People like to, as soon as you get on top, and people see some weakness in you, they just want to bring you down right away and say, just crush you down, and just say, that's it, that we're done. They're done. And even though Kansas City is 2-3, they're still really good. Now, obviously their defense is not, can't deny that, right? They're one of the worst defenses in the league. And Patrick Mahomes is getting a little loose with the ball. He's starting to throw more interceptions than he typically does. He addressed it after the game also, just saying, look, these are uncharacteristic mistakes for me. I never throw this many picks, especially early in the year. For his career, I think they said he had never thrown an interception in September, and he's already thrown a few. So it's like, this is not the usual Patrick Mahomes. I think there's a couple things happening. One, people get paid and they leave. Obviously, in free agency, you can't keep everybody. Mahomes got his big contract, long-term extension, and there's a Super Bowl hangover. When you go to the Super Bowl, it's hard. I mean, outside of Brady and the Bucs, we'll see if they can get back, but you just don't see teams repeating, or even if they get back, it's just hard to win multiple Super Bowls in a row. And I think this is a natural hangover for a group that, has been playing a lot of football. So to say that Kansas City's dead, I don't think so. However, the division's hard, and I'll talk about the Chargers in a second, but the Raiders, I mean, don't get me started on that. We'll see what everything comes out with. And if you don't know about this, by the way, John Gruden was fired or resigned because of these emails from 10 years ago where he was making racial and insensitive, sexually oriented, discriminating emails. We'll just say that. And there's a lot more involved there. So I can't comment on it yet, but there's obviously a lot of stuff happening with Gruden and the Raiders. So where do the Raiders go from here? So for Kansas City, you got Denver, who's starting to slide, but still a tough team. Raiders are kind of in the mix. And then you got the Chargers, who are doing great. And like I said, I'll talk about that in a second. I want to get to the Buffalo Bills, though. The Buffalo Bills are the real deal. They're putting up over 30 points a game, I believe, every single game. They're crushing teams on the road. They just went into Kansas City, one of the toughest places to play, and just lit them up, won by double digits. Josh Allen might be the best quarterback in the league next to Justin Herbert. We'll have to see down the stretch how they do. But the Buffalo Bills are for real. Their defense is really good. And obviously their quarterback and offense also really good. Josh Allen's coming into his own. I think the Buffalo Bills could go to the Super Bowl this year. No surprise. They're playing as good as anybody right now. But as far as the Charger game that I went to against the Browns at SoFi Stadium, by the way, the tailgating was amazing. Had a great time with my dad and some of our family friends. So it was a lot of fun being there. Now, I went to the Rams game, as some of you know, the week before. Didn't tailgate. This is a different deal. We did the whole tailgating thing near SoFi. Charger Alley or Thunder Alley with the Chargers. It was a lot of fun. It was really cool. So got to experience that and go to SoFi again. Sat on the other side of the stadium this time and probably saw the best live football game I've ever seen. Arguably the best sporting event I've ever seen. Not just because it was at SoFi, which is an amazing stadium, but it was 47-42 final score. The Chargers beat the Browns, and the Chargers really had no business winning that game, but they did. They came back from the first half deficit to beat the Browns. As far as the Browns go, Nick Chubb was amazing. The running back, he looked great. Baker Mayfield looked pretty good. Threw for over 200 or threw for over 300 yards. Didn't have any interceptions. Baker Mayfield looked solid, but he's just not Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert's amazing. The guy is just simply incredible. He does it all. He can run. He can throw. He just knows the offense. He takes control of the offense. And what's really cool about the Chargers is Brandon Staley, the head coach, goes for it pretty much on every fourth down. I mean, the guy went for it, 4th and 2 on his own, underneath his own 20. Like, you're backed up in your own territory and you're going for 2 every time. Pretty intense. But knowing that, and Herbert can command that offense, it works. And they were rewarded for being bold. And I think there's a saying about fortune rewards the bold, or whatever it is, favors the bold. They went for it on a ton of 4th downs, even 4th and 8, and got them. They have so much firepower in that offense. Mike Williams, the receiver, who's completely a non-factor in Anthony Lynn's offense last year, is now a freaking stud. He's a dude now. And Herbert found him twice for 2 long touchdowns. So it's like, damn, dude, where's this offense been? Austin Eckler, the running back, was amazing in the running game and the passing game. He was great to watch. Keenan Allen's still there. They threw to the tight end Parham for a touchdown. They got Jared Cook. This Chargers team is going to be very tough to beat. Their only losses to the Dallas Cowboys at SoFi a few weeks ago, and that was a close game too. So Dallas seems to be legit, but the Chargers also seem to be legit. The Browns are tough, man. They came off of a game against Minnesota, a low-scoring game. I don't want to talk about it, but I unfortunately decided not to play Justin Herbert in fantasy this weekend. I don't really want to mention that. But anyways, because I thought the Browns had a legit defense, but oh well. Anyways, crazy game. Chargers ended up winning. Awesome game. But that brings me to Odell Beckham Jr. I made a video of this. Check out my Instagram. I also did it on my TikTok, but check out my Instagram about a video I did on this, about how Odell is just basically, since 2014, and I got the numbers to back it up, you can check. Since 2014, his yards per game have decreased every single year for the past 7 years. So he went from over 100 yards a game average per game in 2014. Now he's in the 40-yard per game average. He's a non-factor. They barely throw to him. He had a huge drop on 4th down for the Browns this past weekend. He is just an afterthought now with this Browns offense, especially with Chubb. And I know Jarvis Landry got hurt, but you got Kareem Hunt, you got Njoku, you got Austin Hooper, the tight ends. Odell Beckham just doesn't fit. They tried to fit him in last year. And after Odell got hurt, hate to say it, they got better without Odell. When you have a big name wide receiver, you feel like you have to force feed him, or the diva in him, you have to get him the ball all the time to make him happy. No, it doesn't work. You don't need a diva wide receiver to be good in the NFL. And you really don't see teams that have those win anyway. So I think he's obviously severely fallen off. He doesn't fit. I don't know what the future is for Odell Beckham Jr. They're already talking about trading him at the deadline. I think you got to deal Odell. He doesn't fit. It's just what it is. And him and Baker Mayfield's chemistry is off. It's just not there. So I think they got to make a deal for Odell Beckham Jr. It just doesn't make sense anymore in Cleveland. Let's talk some college football real quick. I want to get to that. Finally, I made a video about how I don't see any assistants last week beating Nick Saban. He's 24-0 at Alabama against former assistants that he had at Alabama underneath him. He was 24-0 going into the weekend. I thought the Texas A&M game was an afterthought. I thought it was going to be Kirby Smart and Georgia getting him at least in the SEC championship game, or eventually in the college football playoff. Kirby Smart at Georgia is going to get 2 chances at Saban at the end of the year, not now. So he goes to Texas A&M and loses to Jimbo Fisher, a former assistant, former Florida State guy, for those of you that remember Jimbo Fisher. Couldn't believe it. He finally lost to one of his assistants. I never thought it would be this weekend, but it was. And now they're out of the top 5. It's a weird top 5 now. You had the big win for Iowa against Penn State at Iowa. That was a huge win, number 3 versus number 4. Now you got the top 4. You got Georgia at number 1, who's going to cruise all the way till the end. Iowa number 2. Cincinnati's who's undefeated at number 3. They beat Notre Dame. Oh, yeah, whoop-de-doo. Big overrated Notre Dame. By the way, though, if you're a Notre Dame fan, you got to admit, they're so overrated. The country wants them to be really good, but they're like USC. They're like Texas. They're always overrated for who they really are. Miami, they're just the national brand that people want to be really good, but they're really not that good. So like I said, Georgia number 1, Iowa number 2, Cincinnati number 3, and Oklahoma now at number 4 after that crazy wild game against Texas they had in the Red River rivalry. Say that 3 times fast. Oklahoma snuck in the top 4. Alabama's looking on the inside or the outside looking in at number 5. And then you got Ohio State, you got other teams, Oregon in the mix. So this is for anybody to get in. You know, Alabama still might sneak in with 1 loss later on during the year. We'll see if they can still make it to the SEC championship game. But right now, this is a strange top 4 with Iowa, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma is usually mixed, but Iowa and Cincinnati, I still believe in my heart that Georgia and Alabama are leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else that has a chance to win a championship. I just don't see it from these other programs. I really don't. But we'll see. And speaking of Iowa, my guest today is Matt Nordby, who went to Iowa State, but he is a true Iowa man. So I think it's kind of cool we have a guy from Iowa. But yeah, crazy college football weekend. Lots more to come with that. Real quick, some baseball. Like I mentioned off the top, the biggest surprise to me in the playoffs so far is the Boston Red Sox. I thought they were going to get swept. I really did. I thought this team kind of limped into the playoffs. I know they beat the Yankees in a big, play-in game, whatever, but I thought the Rays were the best team in the American League, just waiting to crush the Red Sox. and they beat them in 4 games. The Red Sox did. Unbelievable. I did not see that coming. I thought the Tampa Bay Rays were going back to the World Series. Again, talk about hangover from the previous years. It happens. These things happen. You run into a hot team. And if you remember 2004, the Red Sox got hot. They were down 0-3 to the Yankees, and they ended up winning the World Series that year and propelled them to another World Series in 2007 as well. It's amazing what happens in baseball. It's all about the hot team. You just never know. And the Red Sox are hot. So they're moving on to the next round. We'll see who they play. Obviously I record these on Tuesday. So when you get it on Thursday, stuff can happen in the playoffs. I can't talk about the Dodgers yet just because, at this moment in time, they're down 2-1 after the game they lost Monday night. So I hope by Thursday the Dodgers are still in it, but we'll see. San Francisco looks pretty tough. So anyways, lots of playoff baseball to go. I'll leave you with that, and I'll let you get to my interview with Matt Nordby, who's a former baseball executive with the Pirates and then took a total career change and went to NASCAR. And he's been in NASCAR for 10 years in Charlotte, living there. So from baseball to NASCAR, different roles, but still in the communications department. So I got a chance to meet him at a media conference. So fun interview with Matt today. So hope you guys enjoy that. This was my 2 cents segment for the week. And I will see you on the interview coming up right now. Ladies and gentlemen, football is back, NFL and college, and all of your NBA and NHL and playoff baseball needs over the next few months. And the Too Tall Sports podcast is proudly brought to you by Vegas Sports Advantage. VegasSportsAdvantage.com. Use my promo code TOOTALL to get 25% off all of their texting packages. So what that means is they are going to text you right before a slate of games will start. Let's say for football Sunday, the games usually start, the first round starts at 10 a.m. They'll text you at about 9:50, 9:55. You got to be ready on your computer or on your app, wherever you bet your games, whichever sports book or sporting bets website you use your own. This is just a service that's going to text you their top picks based on the algorithm that they have set up. They wait till all the big sharp money comes in, and then they give you their best bet or two right before the games start at different times of the day. So they do text you the picks. You take care of them on your own and bet however much you want. They usually recommend 1 or 2 units of your normal, $50, $100, whatever you like to bet. Use your own judgment on that. However, VegasSportsAdvantage.com. Use my promo code TOOTALL. That's TOOTALL for 25% off all of the packages that they give you. They'll text you the picks. You get a certain number of picks, and then it'll run out, and you can use my promo code again if you want to. But 25% off. They're awesome. I use them. I make money off them all the time. I use my own sports book that I've chosen to put my bets on. But Vegas Sports Advantage is legit. They use their algorithms. Check them out. VegasSportsAdvantage.com. Promo code TOOTALL. What is up? Thank you for joining me on the Too Tall Sports podcast today. I have a great interview lined up for you, as always. Today's guest is Matt Nordby. I met him at a Lee Steinberg Sports Media Conference that I did about a month ago, and he was nice enough to come on and join me on the podcast. He is the Senior Director of Communication for NASCAR, believe it or not, but he has a baseball background, worked in the Pittsburgh Pirates organization on the communications side, and then made a sport change from baseball to NASCAR, knew nothing about it, and he's been in NASCAR for 10 years. So we talked to Matt all about his journey. He also grew up in Iowa, and I played minor league baseball there, as you guys know. So lots of connections there with Matt. Great conversation as well. So we talk all things NASCAR and baseball today. As always, you can follow me at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's on Instagram. I do a lot of videos there, a lot of fun series. Like right now, I got a best chain restaurant series for minor leaguers that are broke. So it's kind of fun. I've been doing that. Best and worst stadiums. I preview those as well. So check me out on Instagram at Too Tall Sports Podcast. On Twitter, it's at Too Tall Sports. You can check me out there. We also have a YouTube channel, Too Tall Sports Podcast. Just type that in. Check out our YouTube channel. Please subscribe, leave a comment, a like, share the videos, whatever you can do to get some more buzz for us. We really appreciate it. At the very least, subscribe so you can watch our videos and interviews and some short form videos as well. Sometimes I'll just post my 2 cents segment on there if you want to just watch that. It's about 10, 15 minutes, sometimes less. But you can just watch that if you just want to hear me. But the interviews are on there as well. On the audio side, please head over to Apple Podcasts. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. You can find me there. Please leave a review, leave a comment, a like, and also if you could subscribe there, that'd be really great for us. The big thing on Apple is the 5 stars. If you could scroll down, if you haven't done that yet, hit the 5 stars. That would really help us out, boost some ratings, and get on the new and noteworthy for Apple, which we're always trying to get on. You can also listen on Spotify, same thing, Too Tall Sports Podcast. We're on Amazon Music, Google Play, we're on Pandora, wherever you get your podcasts, we're there. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. Please enjoy my interview with Matt Nordby, and I'll see you on the other side. Too Tall Talk.
We had a pond.
All right, welcome back to the Too Tall Sports Podcast. My next guest is the Senior Director of Communications at Nascar. He's been with Nascar for over 10 years now. He was the Manager of Business Communications for the Pittsburgh Pirates organization from 2007 to 2011. He played college baseball at Iowa State, and he's here to tell us all about his career and life all the way from Quad Cities, Iowa. He is Matt Nordby. What's going on, Matt? Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, Brett. Thanks for having me. Good to talk to you.
Same here. I really appreciate it. Just for reference, I was lucky enough to meet Matt at a sports media conference and found out he was a baseball guy. Plus, he worked for the Pirates, and as most of you know, I played in their organization. So I had to get Matt on the show. It was great.
Perfect, Ty. Absolutely.
Definitely. Lot to get to with you, but I do want to start with your upbringing. So you're originally born in Minnesota, but like I mentioned off the top, grew up in the Quad Cities, Davenport, Iowa area. I did play in the minors against the Quad Cities River Bandits at one point in my career while I was locally stationed in beautiful Clinton, Iowa during that time. But for those that don't know about Quad Cities and Davenport area, tell us about what it was like for you growing up there.
It was I loved it. It was a lot of close friends, like everybody gets when they're in their hometown and growing up for a long time in that spot. But you talked about Clinton and the Quad Cities. I used to go to River Bandits games growing up. Huge fan of baseball, as you sort of alluded to. Played for a long time, but Iowa is just a great place to grow up, man. It's a great state, friendly people. Really enjoyed it. And my family's still there. My parents still live there. My brother and his wife are still there in the Quad Cities. So, I'm out here in Charlotte, North Carolina. My wife and I, she's from Iowa as well, central part of the state in Des Moines and Ankeny, Iowa. But we get back once a year around the holidays and love going back and just sort of seeing people and going back to see all the places that we used to visit when we grew up.
One thing I will say is I remember in the summertime, because you're on, was it the Mississippi River up there, right?
Yeah, right on the river.
That field will flood sometimes in Quad Cities.
It does.
And the bugs are everywhere. Flood. It's sticky up there.
It is. And it does do that for sure. But man, it's a beautiful field.
Yeah.
They've done some nice things to that ballpark.
Yeah, right on the water. It's a really cool place to play. So gotta love that. You were a baseball player yourself back in the day, and you ended up playing outfield at Iowa State. So what do you remember about being a young baseball player, maybe high school, and what kind of led you to choose to play at Iowa State?
As a young baseball player, man, a lot of great memories about playing baseball in high school. But for me, I knew I was an undersized guy. I'm not a big guy. I'm still not a big guy. So I was that lefty with speed who could play defense. And, it was my dream to play at a large university and wasn't sure if I was going to get that opportunity. But it was something that came about, had some meetings with some coaches up there and was lucky enough to get a spot at Iowa State. And for me, it was important to stay close to home, but not too close to home. And that was really a big factor in where I decided to go to school. And I would do it all over again. I love Iowa State. Man, tough loss to Iowa the other weekend in football, but
yeah,
high expectations. But loved going to Iowa State, and it was fun because I had a teammate in high school who actually went to the University of Iowa, and he was a pitcher there. So we got to play against each other, in college after playing together in high school. So it's funny that we had some really good players on our high school team, but we weren't a very good team for whatever reason. We never really went anywhere, so to speak. But Yeah, it was pretty cool to be able to stay in Iowa, play at Iowa State, play in the Big 12. Some great memories, some great friends built there, and yeah, it was awesome.
So for people that grew up in your area, is it Iowa or Iowa State, or does one lean more toward the other in Quad Cities? What's like the general consensus there?
It's a Hawkeye State. I mean, Iowa's
Yeah.
Hawkeye State. Yeah, it's definitely the Iowa Hawkeyes. To my chagrin, all my they're Hawkeye fans. Even the ones that didn't go there, I mean, diehard Hawkeye fans. And so, you obviously have more of your Iowa State fans as you move to the central part of the state, and maybe it's just me and just sort of what I've grown up around with my friends and growing up in the Quad Cities, which is only, 45 minutes from Iowa City, but seems to be the dominant fan base for sure. I feel like even here in Charlotte, I see Hawkeye logos everywhere.
Really?
It's crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
Iowa's got a strong football brand, so
They do. They're like the Steelers of college football. It's crazy.
Right. Same colors too. There you go.
Exactly.
You did have one memory that stood out to you before Iowa State cut their baseball program, unfortunately. But what happened on the last game at Cap Tim Field at Iowa State?
Yeah, Cap Tim was our home field, and I was, I don't know if it's fortunate. I don't know if it's a fortunate event, but I actually caught the last out of the regular season at Iowa State. I actually made the last out too at the plate in the bottom of the ninth too. So, not technically the last outs in program history, because we went to the Big 12 tournament and played there. But yeah, I guess that's the one or two events there at the end of the season that I do recall, and it was sad to see the program go.
Yeah, it is. Especially baseball is it's such an old time sport that you just never think will go away. But when you lose funding, and it's hard.
Yeah, a lot of different reasons for things like that to happen. And, the program had been around for over 100 years in the Big 12. Tough to see it go. And now, of course, we're seeing a lot of other changes taking place with conferences and whatnot. But it was a Big 12 back then, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. That was an awesome conference with some of those schools that were there at, like Texas A&M, and obviously Texas and Oklahoma were there, but A&M, Missouri, those types of schools. So it was fun to travel around and play at those different places.
Yeah, you definitely got to play at some really cool colleges there.
No
So after your baseball career, you decided to take an internship with the AAA team, the Iowa Cubs, and kind of work in baseball. What was that experience like for you? And what do you remember about working for the Iowa Cubs?
Yeah, for me, it was one of those things where definitely a stick and ball guy, obviously. And I knew I wasn't going to get drafted pretty early on. And so it was kind of, for me, something where if I wasn't going to play, I wanted to work in the sport. And my dream was to work in Major League Baseball or at a team, on a team level or at the league itself. So that was my dream. And in Iowa, there's not professional teams, right? We talked about Iowa and Iowa State, and of course there's Northern Iowa, but no professional teams in any sport, at least at the level. And so, I sort of struggled with, how do I go about, finding my way to a major league team and getting an opportunity to even be considered for a job like that. So in Iowa, what I did throughout my last year in college and the summer after college, after I graduated and all those things, is I reached out to anybody and everybody. I did research on websites, team sites, found names, and tried to make phone calls to executives at every Major League Baseball team. I did it to NFL teams as well, pretty much every sport, just trying to make a connection, trying to gather advice, find a mentor, figure out what do I need to do to put myself in position to get a job like the one I wanted. And so while I was doing that, certainly needed to find something before I got there. And I was fortunate enough to get an internship with the Iowa Cubs. I had interned with them briefly a couple summers prior. So they knew me, I knew them. I expressed my interest in coming back to work and told them I would do anything and whatever it takes. And did get an internship working in sales and sort of marketing. It's a label, but in minor league baseball, particularly as an intern, you're really doing everything. Whatever the team needs, whether it's working in the ticket office, wearing the Cubby Bear costume, sell sweet tickets, selling sponsorship. And so that's what I did. I started in that spring. of that season. I think it would have been 2002, and worked as an intern for the entire baseball season, doing all those different things and just trying to get my feet wet. And at the same time, trying to keep lines of communication open with people in Major League Baseball at different teams and whatnot, so I could try to get my foot in the door at that level. So, I think for me, working in minor league baseball, particularly the Iowa Cubs, it was in Des Moines, great organization, some great people, affiliated with the Chicago Cubs. So there's a lot of history there. Huge Cub fan following, obviously in Des Moines, Iowa, for sure. So that was a cool experience. And like I said, you're doing a little bit of everything. And so you're getting to learn what you like and what you don't like about working in sports, which includes long hours, right? And working nights and then for the game and then coming in the very next morning and doing it all over again for an 8-game homestand, those types of things. And so it was great to get that experience. And I would not change that in terms of what I did to launch my career and sort of get things going. Sure.
And you eventually got a big break with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Tell us about how that all happened and the networking that helped get you there and kind of how that all came about with Pittsburgh.
Yes, I did get a break, and it was something where, for me, it took longer than I wanted. I did get impatient towards the end. It took me, I worked. So I'll back up for a second. I was able to turn my internship at the Iowa Cubs into a full-time position. So I was fortunate to be able to do that. And I started in corporate sales, which is not where I wanted to be. My goal, my dream job was working sort of on the baseball ops side for a Major League Baseball team. So corporate sales on the minor league level, not really the same thing. But again, I was willing to do whatever I needed to do to get my foot in the door, get experience, work in sports. And so I took that role and did it for 3 or 4 months before another opportunity within the organization was made available. And that was doing sort of the media relations side, basically baseball communications, as I know it now, or baseball media relations for the Iowa Cubs, working on the game notes and, writing the post-race recaps and the previews and those types of things for the websites, keeping official book, all those types of things, which I loved. I'm literally a baseball guy. That was what I loved to do.
Sure.
But again, it wasn't at the major league level. So I just continued to network and try to find those connections. And I was lucky enough, I made a couple connections with executives at Major League Baseball teams and just really asked for advice. What do I need to do to get in? What do I need to do to get an opportunity? And basically got the same feedback from all of them. But one in particular, I could really tell that they were invested in trying to help me get to that next level. And they had been sort of through the same type of thing at my stage, the stage I was at in my career. And so they had that drive and the desire to sort of pay it forward and help me and help others. I wasn't the only one, but it was an executive with the White Sox and he told me that I could stay in touch with him, get advice, hit him up whenever I might have a question or need some guidance on what to do next. And so I took it upon myself to maintain that connection as good as I possibly could and try to build on that. Never once asking for a job. And so, working with him over the course of a couple of years, I was lucky enough to get introduced to some folks at the Pirates, namely Kevin McClatchy, who owned the group or owned the team at that time. And I was able to get in front of him and just talk to him about what I wanted to do. They didn't have a job for me necessarily at the time, but again, it was an opportunity for me to sit down with the owner of a ball club. And again, I'm 22 years old and I'm like, oh my God, is this really happening? Nervous as hell. Right. But a great guy who introduced me to other people in the organization, had more conversations with them, and got to know that was my foot in the door right at the major league level, and was able to, long story short, and we can talk about it a little bit more, but able to then parlay that into an opportunity that they had come available just, a couple months later in communications. And, the rest is history. I was able to apply and went through the process and got the role. But, it was something where I was beginning to get frustrated where I considered making a change in my career. And this opportunity with the Pirates came available to me about 2 weeks before I was going to start law school. Because at that point, I'm like, all right, this isn't working out. I'm not getting a baseball ops gig. I'm not getting a job with Major League Baseball in the route that I'm in. I'm going to go to law school and become a sports lawyer, become an agent.
Wow.
Couple weeks away from starting, and this came available, and I shut that all down, and the rest is history.
It's weird how it happens like that, isn't it?
It is. The timing's uncanny, but yeah, that's how it went down for me. It's great.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and you spent 5 years or 5 seasons with the Pittsburgh Pirates, 2007, 2011. I did want to ask you about the Pirates just from a business perspective. You know, now that you're with NASCAR, which we'll get to in a second, but as far as the small market mindset for Pittsburgh, I've definitely, you know, I've made some videos about how the fact that they're racing to the bottom of the salary cap, right? It's just like they give all their players away, and it's been like a minor league feeding system to other organizations, unfortunately, you know, and they just don't pay their guys. So for you working in that organization with that kind of mindset, what was it like for you on the communication side of still trying to sell tickets? They're not the Yankees. You know, how would you describe that from that perspective?
You know, honestly, for somebody in a front office role, and for me, my role was business communications. So working sort of on amplifying and helping to drive awareness for what was happening off the field. Some of the best experience that you can gain because you're working at everything you need to do. And to me, I have, despite the record of the team when I was there, I have such fond memories of working at the Pirates for 5 years. Mm-hmm. And for 5 seasons. Such great people in that organization. You know, the town is super passionate. To your point, they're passionate if they're not good, but they're unbelievably passionate when they are good.
Yeah.
That goes for the Steelers and the Penguins as well. You know, obviously it's a big sports town. So I really enjoyed my time and the experience that I was able to gain by really having to be strategic about how you're presenting, you know, the product on the field, or different stories to the media that can help drive awareness and help drive tickets and those types of things. You know, that was invaluable to me, and it's definitely helped me in my career. And it's still things you don't take anything for granted, right? It's not always easy, but that drives you to be better, to dig deeper, and to be more strategic in what you're able to do. To try to help drive revenue and drive business goals. So I see it as sort of a positive. And yeah, there was a time I was there before they made the playoffs, but I saw that process in place, sort of building from the ground up and bringing in young talent, developing them. And unfortunately I left. I mean, I wouldn't do anything differently, but I left before they went to the playoffs. But I was able to go back up once they got to the playoffs and experience PNC Park in a playoff environment against the Reds for the first time. I think it was over 20 years. It was unbelievable. The best sports environment that I've ever been to in person.
Wow.
It was ridiculous. Such a cool experience. And so, I mean, even 2 years removed from me working there full time, I was super proud of what was happening. And it was really cool to sort of see it all come to fruition, having been there during the time that was being built. So,
right.
To me, I have fond memories, and I take a lot of value coming from those 5 seasons of the Pirates.
Sure. Yeah. That was 2013 you went back when they made that little playoff run.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Okay. That's right.
Yeah. No, they do have great fans, and they had the history of, you know, the 71, the 79 team, you know, the Pirate fans are good. It's just, they don't win that often. So you made a rare, what I think is a sport change at the executive type of level. So you went from baseball to a complete left turn, no pun intended, to NASCAR.
Nice. Well done. Well played, sir.
I just came up with that right now. And you go from Pittsburgh, you move to Charlotte to work with NASCAR, which is a complete 180 from what you were doing before. And you've been there for 10 years now. So as far as in the beginning, what do you remember about the choice to leave baseball, your dream sport to work in, to go take an opportunity with NASCAR, which you knew nothing about?
Great question. You know, it was, like I said, I loved the Pirates. I loved the Pirates. But for me at that point in my life, you know, I'd been married now. We got married when we moved to Pittsburgh, my wife and I. and priorities sort of changed. And so, I'd worked in baseball and I was loving it. But at the same time, I also had this passion and desire to grow my career, to diversify my portfolio and the things that I was doing. And that hunger sort of led me to think, you know what, maybe there's something else out there. But to your point, I didn't know anything about NASCAR. Not a thing. And had you asked me, I've been here 10 years. Had you asked me 11 years ago, what about NASCAR? I would have been like, no, it's not even on my brain. It's not even something I would even think of to consider.
Right.
But at the Pirates, looking for another role to potentially grow, again, using the network that I created. And this, to me, this is the point, the key takeaway. Your network is so important, in being able to maintain those relationships. You never know what is going to come available for you down the road through some of those people that you reach out to and really work to keep in touch with. So my network that I had developed in baseball, folks leave, they go to other sports, they go do other things. People in your network do the same thing. And that same person who helped me get the job at the Pirates had transitioned to NASCAR, several years prior to that. And a new role became available. And really the whole communications department in NASCAR was sort of being revamped, and they were hiring several positions. And he had reached out to me. I remember I was on vacation in Florida. I'm sitting by the pool and I get a phone call. He reached out and asked, is this something that you'd be interested in? If it's a good fit for you and a good fit for us. It wasn't like, hey, come take this job. Like, I still had to apply and go through the process. But if it was a good fit for both, is it something you'd be interested in? And again, like I mentioned, my priorities had changed. We were looking to start a family, to continue I was looking to continue to grow in my career. And I knew working at a league or a sanctioned body provided me more opportunity to do that rather than at a team. And again, I loved working there, and I love the people who are still there. But that's what I needed at that time. And so, one thing led to another. I interviewed for the role and ended up taking it and getting it. And we moved to Charlotte from Pittsburgh, and we haven't looked back. We love the city. Again, I came in completely blind. I knew nothing about the sport.
Yeah.
But I was able to bring my experiences working in baseball to the sport, which other folks in my department have been able to do as well. And that's the beauty of NASCAR and our department, and even other departments, is you have a lot of different backgrounds. And I know this is true for most industries and leagues and teams, but to be able to bring in fresh thinking and have different points of view is so important. And at the time I was one of those people, and huge learning curve for me, no doubt about it, to learn about the sport. It took me, and not just the sport, but the industry in general, very complex industry, not completely affiliated like Major League Baseball and the teams and those types of things. And so 9-10 months to really sort of begin to even understand how things worked. And so that was a huge change for me. I came from a sport that I'd been playing since I was 4 years old, and working in and playing, to a sport that I had zero experience, either watching, taking part of myself, obviously, but
right.
Working it. So huge learning curve, huge transition, but again, allowed me the opportunity to grow, which I've been able to do here. And again, I probably sound like a broken record, but I feel like I've been fortunate, because every organization that I've worked in my career, just fantastic people across the board. And it's like a family here at NASCAR. We're traveling every week, right? Everybody's not traveling every week, but the sport travels every week to a different city. So, you're like a traveling family. You see the same people at the track every single week. And there could not be better people in this industry than there are. So pretty cool to look back now, almost, 10 years later now, I guess, from being here, and I'm still here, and I love it. Hopefully I'll be here for a lot longer.
There you go. That's awesome, man. Before we get to some of the stuff with NASCAR, just from a communications perspective, we talked off air a little bit about this, but working in baseball is a different type of communication than you're working with one team versus now you're with the equivalent of working for MLB, aka NASCAR, the big name, the big overarching brand of the whole sport. So what was the difference for you coming from baseball from like a job perspective, day to day from baseball to NASCAR?
There's a lot of similarities, right, in what you're doing day to day, in terms of working with the broadcast partners. Here at NASCAR, it's over my time here. It's NBC and Fox now. Several years ago, Turner was a partner, ESPN was a partner. So those are the broadcast partners. At the Pirates, it was your TV and radio affiliates across the state or the tri-state region. So that's one example of things being similar. But when you're at the Pirates, you are solely focused, or the team level, right? You're focused on the media. Not solely. I'll take that back. You're for the majority of the time, you're focused on the media within your market, and you're working with that media, and you're working within the Pittsburgh market, and really trying to do everything you can to get more fans out to the ballpark within that market. When you're at the league, you are working with all the teams, you're working with all the racetracks. You're working with all the different markets that we go to on a weekly basis. And so it changes week to week. So it's a much larger scale in terms of the strategy and having to think ahead and build relationships with a bunch of different media and people, in a bunch of different markets, rather than focused on one. And you're obviously focused on the national media as well from a team side, whether it's the Baseball Tonights and the ESPNs, the Sports Centers, just at a larger scale when you're at a sanctioning body or a league, and trying to penetrate some of those outlets, particularly for a sport like ours. We're not your traditional sort of highlight reel Sports Center type of sport, right? And so we have to do different things and come up with different strategies and try to come up with compelling storylines to work to get on those types of shows, that sort of the casual sports fan would be watching, and so those are some of the biggest differences that I've experienced, working for the team side as opposed to the league side, at least in communications.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. And especially speaking of casual fans, a lot of us have seen the movie Talladega Nights with Will Ferrell starring as Ricky Bobby, of course, which is a hilarious movie that no one really had done a funny movie about racing like that, and John C. Reilly's in it. It's a great movie. Can you explain? I don't know. I guess for someone that's never been to a NASCAR event, what is the hype like? What's it actually like on race day there?
Hilarious movie. I love that.
Yeah.
It's funny. Obviously, it's it likes to stereotype the sport, right? And actually, it's not like that. It's not like that when you go to a race. And
yeah.
And honestly, people are gonna be like, okay, you work for NASCAR, of course you're going to say this, but the experience actually being at a race, the first race I went to, I remember when I did not go to a race until I worked at NASCAR. So came in blind. The first one I went to was at Charlotte Motor Speedway in the fall. And when I got to the track, well, first of all, the venues are massive. I mean, even a short track like Bristol Motor Speedway, it's a huge venue. The track's not that big, but the venue's enormous. Charlotte Motor Speedway is a 1.5 mile track. It's huge. Daytona, I mean, enormous. It has a lake in the infield. It's enormous. So just the scale and how big the venues are was the first thing. But then when you get there and you actually see the cars on the track, you can watch them on TV and they're going fast. You can see they're going fast. When you're standing right behind pit road and you watch them go down the front stretch for the very first time, you are blown away by how fast those cars are actually going. It's incredible. And sort of the visceral experience, the sound, everything that's going on at the racetrack, it's unlike any other sport. And the access that NASCAR has too, I was blown away by that, coming from baseball. I mean, Brett, like every night before the game starts, the team's in the dugout. It's 7:00. Game starts at 7:05. Team's in the dugout. There are no fans on the field. right? At NASCAR, the race is about to start. All the drivers, all the cars are on the grid, out on pit road, national anthem. There are fans everywhere. I mean, within they could touch a driver if they wanted to, they can be in the garage, drivers are walking past, they can take their picture. I mean, to me, that was the equivalent of fans being in the dugout with you guys 5 minutes before first pitch. Like, that's unheard of.
Yeah.
But that's how we do it each and every weekend. I mean, COVID aside, under normal circumstances, that's how we do it. And so there's that. And then watching a pit crew up close in action and just seeing what they're able to do with changing tires and, gassing up the car and doing adjustments, things like that in a matter of seconds. They're so talented. Like, when you see that up close, you're just blown away. It's almost like going to any other sporting event. An NBA game is one that, I think about, where it's like, wow, you don't realize how good they are until you are there in person. It's the same thing here. It really is. Being able to see those guys at work, guys and girls at work up close and in person, it's unbelievable. And so once you go to a race and experience it, I think even if you don't walk away being like a huge NASCAR fan, you walk away going, wow, that experience was unbelievable. I'd like to do that again. And you just get the appreciation for what it offers in person.
I still haven't been to one, but I think we talked about it. I definitely need to go to a race at some point.
We'll get you to one anytime.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. No, it'd be awesome. It'd be cool to come to I've never been to Charlotte before. So I've never even gone there. Obviously never been to Daytona before, or Talladega, whatever. So it would be cool to go to one of those races.
Come on down. Let me know. We'll get you to any of them.
Okay. That sounds great. One, not a negative thing, but just some tough stuff that NASCAR had to go through that I wanted to bring up a little bit. There was obviously some racial tension last year going on with NASCAR, and then the banning of the Confederate flag happened last year within NASCAR. They decided to get rid of that. How do you think overall NASCAR has handled the interracial tension and all the stuff that's happened over the last few years to become more inclusive to everybody?
Yeah, it's a good question. And last year was a tough year across the board for our country for a lot of different reasons, right? But you mentioned we banned the Confederate flag last year. And I think, if you hear folks in the sport, that was something that was a long time coming. And would also say we have a lot more work to do in that space, but it's something that we're committed to and committed to doing. At the bottom line is, NASCAR is a welcoming sport. We want people to know that NASCAR, if you love racing and you want to experience it, come to the racetrack. We want anybody and everybody to be able to come to the racetrack at any time that they want, because, a race fan is a race fan. And inherently we all love racing, whether it was racing our brother or sister to the bathroom, to the bathroom door when we were kids, right? Racing our bikes with our friends around the block, those types of things. So, like I said, we'll admit that we have a lot more to do in that space, but we're committed to doing it. And I can personally tell you from my standpoint, last year, that despite the challenges that our country faced, that sort of resonated across every industry and in every walk of life, in every way, in some form or fashion, I could not have been prouder for what our sport did last year. And it's really, really inspiring to be a part of something that is trying to continue to make that change and make meaningful change. So, it was definitely something that was not only the right thing to do, but something that made me extremely proud.
For sure. And especially like in most sports, if you get the stars, or in your case, the drivers, to get behind it, then you can really make waves, right? It's not just, oh, the fans want this, but if they see their favorite driver embracing new things, they will likely fall in line.
Exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right. And our drivers have been fantastic about that, obviously. And yeah, it really rallied the industry. And we've seen some great things since then. We've Michael Jordan coming in as a team owner, Pitbull coming in as a team owner. I mean, that stuff is game changing. Like, literally, two huge personalities, huge celebrities, Mr. Worldwide, like literally worldwide celebrity. And so to be able to have those types of things start to happen, is fantastic for the sport. And it just shows, that's the commitment to being open and welcoming to everybody.
You just hit on where I was going to go next. You've had a lot of celebrities come through there, athletes come through, do the starting, what is it called? The starting flag or whatever.
The Grand Marshal?
Yes, the Grand Marshal.
Well, that's the command, but the honorary starter, yes.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, and you guys get a lot of like big names that come down to a race, and it's usually their first time too sometimes, and they're usually blown away by it. So what's it been like to have guys like Michael Jordan and Pitbull and other people, that actually are there during the races, and kind of what their thoughts are going in and then afterward?
Yeah, I mean, obviously those two guys, they knew what they were getting themselves into. Michael's been a fan of the sport for a long time. Pitbull has as well. I don't know them personally, but
sure,
I've been able to work with some other celebrities and folks that have come to the track, to your point, that weren't familiar with the sport. And again, it was the same sort of reaction to what I was talking about earlier with my reaction the first time I was at the track. I mean, almost across the board, just blown away by what the sport looks like in person, the experiences, everything that's going on at the racetrack. They've walked away and have loved it. Alvin Kamara is a great example.
That's right.
So Bernard Pollard is another. But being able to work with them and see their reaction, it's one of those things that sort of drives us. One of our goals and one of our strategies, in the communications department, not only celebrities and influencers, getting them to the racetrack, but media, people who might be in a particular market who may not have experienced NASCAR, getting them to the track one time, they'll become a fan or become somebody who's like, oh, I've got to follow this. I got to try that again. I got to see what's happening next week. And we've got some good personalities in terms of drivers, and if folks are able to meet them and talk to them and you sort of build that affinity with those drivers, particularly some of the young ones that we have coming up, that's an added bonus as well. And so, I think by and large, folks who come to the track, celebrities included, who may not have an idea of what the sport is all about or what it's like at the racetrack, they leave going, wow, I need to get some more of that.
I believe it, man. As far as your experience at, Daytona 500 is the Super Bowl of NASCAR. So what can you tell us about it's unlike any other race, kind of like the Masters. It's a tradition unlike any other. So tell us what it's like for you. And you go every year, from what you told me, to Daytona. What's it like? Why is it different than all the other races?
I mean, it's the history. It's iconic. It's a little different for our sport, right? The 500 is by far our biggest event of the year, but it kicks off the season. It's not the culmination of the season.
Right.
So, 101 plus thousand fans packed into the stands. That's just the stands, right? And then you've got the infield, which I talked about, is enormous, filled with campers. To see all those people, the celebrities that are there, it has that big event feel. It's something you can't really explain without being there and being present for the waving, the green flag drops and the cars get going. I mean, you can't really explain it. It is one of those, to me as a sports fan, it should be a bucket list item for sure. Again, the track is massive, just the history, and rolling into Daytona, and you see Daytona International Speedway just towering above everything else. It's just got that aura about it, man. It really does. It's really cool. And I do go every year, and usually it's a week or two long preparation down in Daytona, a lot of late nights and early mornings, and preparation for months in advance. I mean, we're planning for the 2022 Daytona 500 already right now.
Yeah.
So, and when it's your first event, you've got to do it right, and you've got to kick it off right, and you've got to get as many eyeballs as you can to it. So it's just a different experience. And again, something that should be on bucket list for sure.
Definitely. There is another big thing happening in 2022, which we'll get to in a second. But I did want to ask you about, you mentioned something I think during the media conference that I watched or off air to me about, it blew me away, but I guess it really shouldn't. The fact that NASCAR doesn't own all the tracks that they race at. whether it's different cities, and maybe you can go through a few of them that maybe people think they should own, but they don't. And you guys don't visit the same ones every year sometimes. How does that work with NASCAR not owning all of the tracks?
Yeah, I mean, we work very closely with, and then that's sort of why the industry is more complicated than others may be in terms of sports. We don't own all the racetracks, and so we work closely with the different companies and the different racetrack owners, and we're able to work on different schedules on a year-to-year basis based on what tracks we go to. So to your point, in 2021, we made a bunch of changes, and there are certain tracks that we ended up not going to anymore. And other tracks that we were able to either go to for the first time or reintroduce back to our series. And so we're sort of working on trying to innovate in the sport, keep the sport fresh, and getting to some of those new racetracks. And for the non-NASCAR fan or race fan, a lot of that is getting to different size tracks. So people may not know, Daytona is a super speedway. You have intermediate tracks like Charlotte, that's 1.5 miles. You have short tracks like Bristol and Martinsville, and you have road courses as well. Sonoma out in wine country, is Circuit of the Americas down in Austin's another, Road America up in Wisconsin's another. So, I mentioned Circuit of the Americas and Road America, 2 tracks that we went to for the first time this year, that we were able to add to the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. And so, being able to do those types of things help keep the sport fresh. And we just have to continue to work with the different stakeholders in the industry to be able to keep innovating. And that's not, other sports do that as well, but we have to keep those relationships and maintain those relationships to be able to do that. This with the teams, they're obviously they're affiliated with NASCAR as a sport, but we don't have control. We can't tell the drivers what to say or what to do. Like, we need you to make this appearance. I say all that. The drivers are mostly great about it in terms of understanding what we need to do to promote the sport, but we can't require them to do it. So working at the Pirates, for example, I could ask a player, "Hey, I need you to do this interview." They were a Pirates player. They pretty much had to do it.
Right.
So that's a little different in terms of how this sport operates.
And just to go through a few, what are some of the big ones you guys own, and then what are some of the big ones maybe you guys don't own?
Yeah, so we own Daytona. We own Talladega, the 2 super speedways. We own Phoenix out in Arizona, where our championship is this year and will be next year. Watkins Glen, a road course in New York, we own. Kansas out in the Midwest, we own. But Sonoma, some other tracks that we don't own. Sonoma, which is the road course out in wine country, we do not own that one. Charlotte Motor Speedway here up the road, we don't own that one. Bristol Motor Speedway, we don't own. So, it's a Road America we don't own. And they all have sort of, there's another track group, Speedway Motorsports, that owns several, but then there's independents that they have their own racetrack, 1 or 2 that we also race at as well. Nashville Super Speedway, obviously Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That's an iconic venue. So it's just sort of a combination of different track groups or independent owners for the different facilities that we visit.
How far in advance do you guys have to schedule a race at a track? Do you know?
How far in advance do we have to schedule it?
Yeah, like if, let's say you're going to pick a place to go to, how far in advance do you need to make that happen?
That's a great question. That is definitely not one for me, but it's a pretty good runway. I would
like
say.
a year, probably.
At least, yeah.
Yeah. All right, just curious.
Yeah.
Speaking of expanding the sport to new tracks, let's talk about the big news that dropped the other day about the LA Coliseum, believe it or not, in 2022 is going to get a NASCAR race in LA. So tell us how, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. First time we will have ever done something with the Coliseum like this. We've raced at stadiums in the storied past of the sport. Soldier Field was one decades ago, I believe. But we will actually be constructing a race track, a 1/4 mile racetrack inside the Coliseum out in LA. And so, it will be really, really cool to see. It's the weekend before the Super Bowl, which is also in LA, right?
Oh yeah.
The spotlight, sort of the sports spotlight's going to be on the city already. So we'll be able to leverage that. We do have a speedway just outside LA in Fontana,
right,
at Speedway that we race at every year. We'll be racing at again in 2022, a couple of weeks after this. But this is an exhibition event that is, for our sport to be able to do something like this. You could argue that Auto Club Speedway is in the LA market, and it is, but the Coliseum's in essentially downtown LA.
Yeah.
And to be able to put stock cars on a track in a venue like the Coliseum that has the history that it has, Olympics, Super Bowls, USC Trojan football, that's an unbelievable opportunity right there, and to be able to have the spotlight and the eyeballs and to be able to do that and potentially bring in new fans in a city like LA, number 2 TV market in the country. There's so many positives about it. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait to get out there. February 6th. So
okay.
It's going to be a fun weekend.
Yeah, that's really cool. You guys are able to do that. Now, this one you said is an exhibition, so it doesn't count for anything.
It doesn't count on the points towards, points for the playoffs or the championship. It's sort of, the Clash has been in Daytona for many, many years. And it's sort of that exhibition race that we run as part of what is dubbed Speed Weeks down in Daytona. That is part and parcel to what happens in and around the Daytona 500. So this is sort of that event that will help kick off our season. It's just going to be in LA instead of Daytona. Very
cool. No, that would be awesome. Maybe I can actually go up to that. That would be fun. I think that'd be awesome.
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. Last question, just overall in general of your 10 years at NASCAR, what do you think has been your favorite moment or maybe memory or two from the last 10 years of working in NASCAR?
Favorite memory or two? I mean, I was one for sure. I was fortunate enough to, as sort of a NASCAR comms guy and working with the media, and we talked about national media and trying to leverage the different platforms, and certainly working with our broadcast partners, NBC and Fox, and their portfolios. New York and LA, big markets for national media. I was lucky enough to go on what we dubbed the Champions Tour in 2015 when Kevin Harvick won the title, and sort of do that media tour with him, go to New York and be on the different programs. Memory escapes me now, but it's Today's Show, it's Jimmy Kimmel, it's those types of shows, and being able to be with him for 2.5 weeks, and sort of see behind the scenes with our champion, one of the best drivers in the history of the sport, Kevin Harvick. Great guy, was awesome to be around, totally understood what we were doing, wanted to do everything and everything he could to help us promote the sport at a national level and leverage the fact that he won the championship. That was pretty cool. Not many people get to say that they do something like that, and I was able to do that. So that was really fun for sure. And I have to throw this in there since people know that I used to own a Jimmy John's. Kevin Harvick was the Jimmy John's front man for all their ads. So I had to throw that in there. So I knew all about Kevin Harvick when I was running a small Jimmy John's. So that's right. Kind of cool. That's right. Yeah. It was very cool. Well, Matt, thank you very much. It's been great to have you on. Good luck with the rest of this NASCAR season, and we'll look forward to the LA Coliseum in 2022. I appreciate it, Brett. Yeah, looking forward to next year. That one's going to be a great one to get it kicked off. We'll get the playoffs wound up here at the end of the season. We end in Phoenix in November, and then we'll take a quick break and then get back at it in the Coliseum out in LA. There you go. That's right. Real quick, when's the date for the final weekend championship? It's November 5 through 7 down in Phoenix. Down in Phoenix? Yep. Okay. Phoenix Raceway. We'll crown all of our champions down there. So it's gonna be fun. There you go. Awesome. Well, thank you again, and we'll be looking forward to talking to you soon. All right, Brett. Appreciate it.
My thanks to Matt Nordby. I appreciate him coming on behalf of NASCAR. And pretty crazy to have the LA Coliseum host a race, exhibition or not. That's a big deal in 2022. So we'll see you all out there in February. Might have to go to my first race. There you go. Might be LA Coliseum. Who would have thought that they have NASCAR? Anyways, my thanks to Matt. As always, you can follow me at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's on Instagram. On Twitter, it's at Too Tall Sports. If you could head over to our YouTube channel, please check that out, Too Tall Sports Podcast. You can watch the interviews there. You can also subscribe and see some other videos that I post there as well. Sometimes they're short videos. Sometimes they're my just 2 cents by itself. You can watch those if you just want to hear me for 10, 15 minutes talk at you. You can do that with the most relevant topics of the week. For full episodes, you can watch the full interviews there on Too Tall Sports Podcast on YouTube. On the audio side, you can follow us at Too Tall Sports Podcast there. Please subscribe. If you haven't already, scroll down, hit the 5 stars when you can see those. Leave a comment or review at the bottom. That also helps exposure as well. Just something nice. Or if you hate it, whatever. At least you can give me a 5-star. On Spotify, same thing, Too Tall Sports Podcast. You can follow there. We're on Amazon Music, Google Play. We're on Pandora. Wherever you get your podcasts, we're probably there. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next week for another great episode. Peace.